Welcome to our daily reflection for this Sunday, November 23rd. And this is the great feast of Christ the King. And that's how we end our liturgical year. And then, of course, we'll begin shortly next Sunday, Advent. And so here we are at the end of the liturgical year. And what do we do at the end of the year? We do at the end of the liturgical year, Holy Mother Church in her wisdom, what will happen at the end of all time. And so it's kind of like a good runner-up, a good practice. And that is Christ will come as King, and he will reign with his kingdom forever. At the end of time, Christ will make his second coming, and he will come as King, and he will reign over all. And so today we celebrate liturgically Christ's kingship, and it's such a beautiful thing. We start with the Old Testament reading, and in that Old Testament reading from a book of Samuel, we see David crowned and recognized as king of the 12 tribes of Israel. And of course, that's important because David is the great forerunner of the house of David, and Jesus will be born of the line of David. So Jesus will be the heir of David, who will have a kingdom that will last forever. And so we hear what happens with David. It makes us think of the new David, who is the Messiah, Jesus our Lord, Jesus the Christ. And then Psalm 122 is a pilgrimage psalm to Jerusalem, the capital of the tribes and of the kingdom of David. And the psalmist says, it's a joy to me to make pilgrimage to the temple and to come to the capital, Jerusalem. And that's where there will be judgment seats and thrones set up for the house of David. And of course, Jesus will say at the Last Supper to his 12 disciples, you are those with me in my trials, and you will sit on 12 thrones. And so you see Jesus promising, again, Jesus is king, there's a kingdom, right? And that's important because a lot of Christians, especially those who aren't Catholic, see Jesus as king, but they miss the full vision that if he's a king, there must be a kingdom, which is the church, of course. And so Jesus is a king and he has a kingdom, and that we hear that echoed. And then Paul talks about this kingdom in his letter to the Colossians in our second reading, and he talks about how Jesus delivered us from the power of darkness, and in baptism he transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, that God the Father delivered us out of darkness and into the kingdom of his beloved Son, that when we're baptized baptized into the kingdom of his Son. And then shortly after that, he describes that kingdom as being greater than all the powers of the angels, but that he is also the firstborn from the dead, and that he is the head of the body, that is the church. And so he now talks about the kingdom of Jesus as his own body and as the church. So all that comes together. Again, Jesus is the head of the body, the church. He is the king, and there must be a kingdom. And then we have this beautiful gospel from Luke 23 today, which talks about Jesus as king and says, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. And then, of course, the ruler sneered him. He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the chosen one, the Christ, the Messiah, the king, right? And then one of the thieves, crucified with Jesus, then mocks Jesus. Save yourself and us. Now, of course, they're saying if he is the Messiah, if he is the king, he would save himself. But here's the thing about God in his radical love. He doesn't come to save himself. He comes to save us. Jesus doesn't save himself. That's what the world does. The world thinks of self first and self-preservation. Jesus comes not to preserve himself, but to give himself, to spend himself, to sacrifice himself for other, because that's what love does, because God is love. And Jesus, as the Messiah and as the Son of God, will manifest love. He comes as the Messiah, the King, not to save himself, but to save others. And so we should hear that good news and then be like the good thief who says, remember me, Jesus, when you come into your kingdom. And so let us realize that love doesn't save itself, it saves others. And so we need to imitate our King and our Lord Jesus Christ and look not towards self-preservation and protection so much as selfless gift to others, to help save others for the sake of Christ. Let's pursue and run after that.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.